oversubscription as investors pump 12.37 billion cedis into Treasury bills following 2026 mid-year budget review. And much later, senior fellow at Africa Policy Lens notes government's low-cost borrowing signals confidence, but warns crowds out private sector.
If a lender chooses to lend to government at a lower rate of around 5% and forsaking the private sector that will pay more, it tells the level of confidence. They prefer shorter and lower returns than investing with businesses for a longer period.
Plus, Food and Beverages Association of Ghana welcomes fruit juice tax removal, urges review of bonded warehouse policy.
The removal of the 20% excise tax on locally manufactured fruit juice is a very significant step. Sales is very slow.
I am Christabel. Success Trevor will bring you details of our headlines and other stories shortly. Don't go away. The government of Ghana secured its fifth consecutive oversubscription on the domestic market on July 24, 2026. This follows investors offering 123 and 70 billion cedis against a target of 9.492 billion cedis across the 91-day, 182-day and 364-day tenors. Take a listen.
Government accepted 11.545 billion cedis of bids, representing a subscription rate of 130.3%, an oversubscription of 30.3% above target, and an acceptance rate of 93.3% of total bids received. The strong turnout came just after the 2026 mid-year budget review and signals sustained investor confidence in government paper. The 91-day bill received 2.952 billion cedis in offers, with 2.602 billion cedis accepted at 5.78%. The 182-day bill saw 1.307 billion cedis in bids and 1.121 billion cedis accepted at 7.68%. Demand was heavily skewed towards the long end as the 364-day bill attracted 8.112 billion cedis in bids and government took 7.821 billion cedis at a yield of 12.96%. The yield curve reflects a clear preference for longer tenors as investors lock in higher returns amid inflation and fiscal risk expectations. The 7.18% point gap between the 91-day and 364-day rates shows the market is demanding a significant premium to commit funds for 1 year. While the oversubscription gives government room to meet its financing needs without resorting to the external market, the high cost of the 364-day borrowing at nearly 13% will add pressure to debt servicing in the second half of the year.
Senior fellow at African Policy Lens, Dr. Eric Boachi-Adam says the fact that investors are lending to government at rates as low as around 5% instead of the private sector shows strong confidence in the state's creditworthiness. Speaking on the 2026 mid-year budget review, he noted that lenders currently prefer short-term, low-return government paper over longer-term investment in businesses, a trend that reflects both risk perception and market liquidity preferences. Dr. Boachi-Adam commended government's plan for the domestic debt exchange program settlement through the sinking fund, which has accrued 15 billion cedis and expected to reach 30 billion cedis by end of first quarter of 2027. However, he raised concerns about the government's heavy participation in the short-term market. While government says the strategy will save about 4 billion cedis, the policy analyst warned it risks crowding out the private sector, which typically pays higher rates to access credit for expansion.
Banks are choosing to play in the lower tier of the yield by lending to government around 5.7% when they could have lended to businesses in the region of around 15%, given the fact that policy rate and the Ghana reference rate sit within above the 10% threshold. If a lender chooses to lend to government at a lower rate of around 5% and forsaking the private sector that will pay more, it tells the level of confidence where in this case they prefer shorter and lower returns than investing with businesses for a longer period. Now, another thing is the disconnect between the inflation rate currently sitting at 5.3% and the policy rate. The difference giving us a real returns of about 900 basis points. The spread is so wide that it is actually telling us the position of the central bank and the perceived risk to borrowers. If that gap is not close enough, it will still make the cost of borrowing a bit difficult. Yes, we have come from an era where we were borrowing let's say 27% last year to around 15% for commercial private businesses. In as much as it is good, if we look at the spread, it doesn't tell a good story. And I'm thinking by now, the gap should have closed a bit.
That's Senior Fellow at African Policy Lens, Dr. Eric Boachi Adom there. The Food and Beverages Association of Ghana has welcomed government's decision to abolish the 20% excise tax on locally manufactured fruit juice, observing the tax had long been opposed by industry players. Now, FABAG noted the move will boost production, reduce consumer prices and create jobs, while calling for a review of proposed restrictions on the storage of goods in bonded warehouses. Speaking to 3 Business, the executive chairman of the association, John Awuni, also cautioned that high production costs, particularly utility tariffs, remain a major challenge for manufacturers and could limit the full benefits of the tax relief.
The removal of the 20% excise tax on locally manufactured fruit juice is a very significant step. It's a bold initiative the government has taken. I think that the government quest to streamline the storage of goods in bonded warehouses, reducing storage period to 3 months for perishable goods and 6 months for general goods, is something that needs to really be looked at because sales is very slow. And also generally, it is not possible that some goods can be turned around within 3 months and 6 months, respectively. And also generally, most of the time, businesses try to take advantage of international prices. When prices are down, then they can be able to take advantage and import a lot of it. But now, if you have to be doing like rolling 3 months, you cannot keep it more than in the bonded warehouse more than 3 months or 6 months for that matter. I think that it will create some challenges and it may not inure to the benefit of the country in terms of food security. It may not inure to the benefit of the country in terms of price stability.
John Awuni is Executive Chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana. The Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, CEMSI, has described the 2026 Mid-Year Budget Review as positive, citing reforms introduced by the Ministries of Energy and Green Transition and Finance to address debt challenges in the power energy sector. Executive Director of CEMSI, Benjamin Nsia, said the allocation of 6 billion cedis by the Finance Minister to defray legacy debts and procure fuel for power generation will help sustain electricity supply and ease pressure on the sector. However, he expressed concern over the budget's revelation that government is struggling to mobilize adequate revenue from utility consumers.
Some allocations by the ministry in terms of allocating over 6 billion Ghana cedis to defray some legacy debt and also procure fuel to sustain the flow of power. Unfortunately for us, I think the budget also reveals our inability to mobilize a lot of revenue from utility consumers or utility users in the sense that the ECG that takes about 80% of power generated is still unable to collect much revenue from utility consumers, in a sense that the budget highlights only about 57% of revenue being collected from utility end users. And this is quite challenging if actually you want to address the power sector debt situation.
We'll now take a look at how the cedi is faring against major trading currencies and how some of key commodities are also faring on the global market.
Interbank foreign exchange market where banks trade amongst themselves. The dollar is selling at 11 cedis, 64 pesos. It's gained 1 peso. The British pound is selling at 15 cedis, 53 pesos. It's gained 3 pesos. The euro is selling at 13 cedis, 25 pesos. It also gained 1 peso. However, be guided that these figures could be higher at a forex bureau near you. In the global commodities market, Brent crude is trading at $96.78 per barrel. Gold is trading at $4,052.79 per ounce, up by $3.31. Cocoa is trading at $5,376 per ton, up by $75.
That'll be all for the business news on Sunrise. For more business stories, please check out our website on 3news.com. My name is Christabel Success Treve. And guys, Johnny is back. I'm good. Very, very fine. Good to see you.
What have you been up to?
Well,